Oh, yeah, Duck fans. We've got a spring game to break down reactions from a beautiful day at Autzen Stadium over the weekend. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster and lifelong Oregon Ducks fan. Thanks for making this your first listen or your first view if you're watching on YouTube every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks every single weekday. And there were so many things to talk about from over the weekend. And guess what? We're going to get to them all week long here on the pod. So if you feel like I didn't cover something today on the show talking about the spring game, and you say, hey, it's Spencer, you didn't talk about what do you think about this? Hit me up on Twitter at smalls_55 or at Locked On Ducks. You can DM those accounts or tweet with the hashtag AskLODPod. And boom, you get a question answered here on the show. Anything about the spring game, fire it my way, and I will answer it as insightfully and thoughtfully as I know how. So, biggest takeaways from the spring game. Number one, first and foremost, in headlines everywhere, everything you read, everything you listen to, everything you watch, the number one thing, there were explosive plays. Hallelujah. There were explosive plays. Now, I don't know if that was deliberate on the part of the coaching staff. Maybe they sensed that fans had frustrations, or maybe they watched some film from last year and realized what everybody else did, which is, boy, until the Alamo Bowl, doesn't look like they went downfield very often, which is very, very true, as we all know. So maybe they saw that and thought, you know what, it's a spring game. And, it's going to favor the offense because we don't want to get anybody hurt. By the way, Jackson Powers Johnson, Dan Lanning says he expects to be okay. Byron Cardwell was held out for precautionary reasons. Same with Dante Manning. They're all expected to be all right. So we're good there. But this game is going to tend to favor the offense because you don't want to have any of those big injuries. And it's just kind of the way that it tends to go. But it doesn't mean the defense wasn't still playing hard or wasn't trying to make plays or that there wasn't plenty to take away from that side of the ball. But the explosive plays were the story coming out of the Oregon spring game. Perhaps most notably because it happened on the very first play. Now, the good news is that Bo Nix hit an open 7 McGhee who looked very good running routes out there and catching the ball down the field. He did have, kind of a fumble or a ball that he should have held on to later in the game, but I think he'll be okay. He seems to be adjusting just fine. I'll get to him a little bit later. But Bo Nix hits a wide open 7 McGhee. Steve Stevens completely blew the coverage. He and Gonzalez not on the same page on that side of the field. I'm pretty sure it was those two. Complete blown coverage, but Bo Nix recognized it. And whereas I think Anthony Brown might have already determined that he was going to go to a shorter route before seeing that come open, he hit him in stride. And then 7 McGhee, who said he idolized Anthony Thomas, did his best Dat impression, weaving his way back and forth, pinballing down the sideline and turning a guy around. So that was great. And the good thing about that happening in the spring game for Oregon is that we at least know that the players on this team are capable of making such plays. Is it different when you're talking about Saturdays in the fall going against other teams? Yes. But we at least know it's not as if the defense wasn't trying. Of course they were. But the offense was able to make explosive plays. We know that the receivers can catch the ball down the field and make plays. We know that these quarterbacks can make throws down the field to make those sorts of plays, meaning that we should very much have that expectation going into the 2022 football season that we will see these sorts of explosive plays that were severely lacking from the Mario Cristobal offense over the last couple of years. We should expect to see them from time to time. It's not going to be every time, but Colin Cowherd used to say this about the Saints with Drew Brees, that they had to work very hard. There were no easy touchdowns. And he's 100% right to point that out for a football team, that when you have to work so hard and every drive feels like you have to grind it out, and there aren't just any easy ones to get points, it wears on the psyche and it wears on the physical state of your offense. So it's an important element to the Ducks' offensive repertoire that they need to be able to bring in. So it was nice to see that happening right from the get-go. Seven McGhee was wide open, but Bo Nix put it where he needed to. So that was a good thing to see. Here's another big headline that a lot of people were freaking out about, and I think kind of overreacting to. Oh my gosh, Oregon was under center. I have to admit, it was kind of weird. I don't think Oregon's been under center since Darren Thomas handed off to LaMichael and he was safetied by Nick Fairley at University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale. So I think that everyone, has wanted to see this for a while. And like you heard Nick Aliotti, who is just awesome. How much fun was it to hear him on the call for that game? And he was catching up with all the guys like Dat and Haloti, and they didn't really know it was going to be him. And he said, "Hey, it's Nick Aliotti." And the players would go, "Oh, what's up, coach? How's it going?" I thought all that was really, really fun. What a great day this was for Oregon football overall. But, Aliotti said something at one point about, "Oh, I think they need to present that threat." That's a very old school approach. You don't need to do anything. Am I opposed to it? No. But I don't think that what's been missing from Oregon's offense over the past couple of years has been going under center. That's not what they need to do. If they want to do that and they have the personnel to do it, and that's what Kenny Dillingham wants to do as the OC, then fine. I don't really care one way or the other. But I watched, 4 of the greatest years of offensive football in the history of college football, where the Ducks went under center, I don't know, 6 or 7 times. You don't have to do it. It's just a matter about what you can do effectively. And so, am I opposed to it? No, I am not. If we want to present that threat and run plays from there, sure, there are great things you can do from an under center look. But have I been on the fences clamoring for it, saying, "Oh, if we just went under center, we could do this, that, or the other thing"? Oregon was great on 3rd and 4th and short last year. You know why? They have a great offensive line. Sure, you could quarterback sneak, but you know what else happens in a quarterback sneak? Sometimes a quarterback gets hurt. Happened to Patrick Mahomes in the NFL. So I think that there are pluses and minuses to everything here. And what, the under center brings can also have some detractions and limitations as well. I'm not a huge critic about like, oh, it's got to look this way. We got to do this. Do whatever works as long as it's not the pistol. Because the pistol without an RPO option, as we know, nobody wants to see that again. So that's the one place where I'll put my foot down is if you're going to go out there and run the pistol with no RPO component, the Marcus Arroyo offense, then no thanks. I'm going to pass on that. But generally speaking, run whatever works. If that's going under center all the time, great. If that's going in shotgun all the time, great. I don't really care. I don't care how the sausage is made, just as long as it's good enough to put on my make your own pizza. That's it. That is all. That is all I need to know there. But more takeaways coming from the Oregon spring game. But first, I want to tell you about Built Bar. You all know I love Built Bars. I mean, for those of you that are with me here every day, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love doing the show for you. And you know by now, I'm a huge fan of Built Bars because they've got a bunch of great flavors. They're high in protein. They're low in sugar. They're low in calories, too. I mean, they taste better than a lot of candy bars, but they're actually good for you. That's the amazing thing about them. And you can get 15% off your order if you go to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15. That's 15% off your order at locked or with the promo code LOCK15 at built.com. The show also brought to you by Athletic Greens. Speaking of eating healthier, which Built Bars make it much easier to do, 1 scoop of Athletic Greens each day, and boom, you will see better gut health and results across the boards. Vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. It's got it all. It's also lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy, or gluten-free. Costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do, visit athleticgreens.com/college. That is OregonFootball.com/college. Go check them out today so that you can get healthier. And we all want Oregon's offense to be healthier, and it certainly looked that way. And there were a bunch of standout players. So we'll get to some, and I'm going to talk about the quarterback specifically tomorrow. I thought they deserved their own, full segment to break it all down. But long story short, kind of looked like Bo Nix was the best quarterback of the bunch. Did it not? If you disagree, by all means, hop in the comments, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever, at Smalls_55, DMs wide open. You can tear me to shreds if I'm wrong on that. But I think the consensus is pretty clear that Bo Nix the best quarterback that we saw over the weekend. But that will be for tomorrow. So some other guys from Oregon who had exceptional days in the spring game. Let's start with Seven McGee. I love Seven McGee. I love that he wears the number 7 because I love the sort of energy that is inherently bringing in terms of his personality to the locker room, number 1. Number 2, he said that he idolized Anthony Thomas growing up, which speaks to the brand power of Oregon football since Seven McGee is from, wait for it, New York. But people wanted to watch Oregon and D'Anthony Thomas, even out on the East Coast where, Pac-12 after dark games are kicking off at, I don't even know, dark 30, my bedtime, basically. I also go to bed very early. But he, in that busted coverage play on, the first play from scrimmage in the Dan Lanning era was a defensive mishap. Ironic because I don't think we'll see that a lot this fall. But when he got in space, he showed that Dat-like ability. I'm not saying he is D'Anthony Thomas. I'm saying there's some similarities there, and it was pretty clear to me that he watched a lot of the former Oregon standout and track star growing up because he had that wiggle where he was turning the defensive back around, and he just showed the speed. You get him the ball in space, that guy's doing the rest. He was back there returning kicks. Special teams were not full contact, which is very, very smart. Glad that was the case, and that's what everybody does, which is good. But he just showed a lot, and I think that, having him return kicks, I'm so on board. Lining up at receiver, I like that too. Getting him carries every now and then. Yeah, get this guy the ball any way you can. I thought he looked great. And by the way, he's making a transition. He was recruited to Oregon as a running back. He showed the hands last year, catching a couple of option pitches, and you looked and went, boy, could he kind of be a wide receiver? Is that the sort of player? I mean, he looks like he's got great hands. Well, now he's making the transition full-time to wide receiver. And he comes out after the long play. The yellow team runs the ball and they get stuff short. And then he goes in the slot and on an RPO beats Jamal Hill, who's a really nice player in the secondary for the Ducks, has been for the last several years. He's brand new at wide receiver, and he beats Jamal Hill one-on-one inside and makes a one-handed catch. I mean, are you kidding me? You talk about exploding onto the scene. That was awesome. I thought that was just absolutely fantastic. Now he did, kind of have a ball security issue later in the game. I don't remember. I think it was ruled a fumble or it was an incomplete pass. I don't know, one of the two. But anyway, he should have caught it and hauled it in. He ended up losing the ball late. I'm not as concerned about that because he's still adjusting to play wide receiver. And I'm just amazed how seamlessly he appears to be making that change. That's a tough thing to do, to undergo a position change. So that was really, really good. Speaking of wide receivers, Dante Thornton looked pretty good. He's clearly put on some pounds, by the way, because I know the phrase out there amongst Duck fans is unleash the skinnies. And that's very understandable. How could you not want to unleash the skinnies, right? I think that what we have seen from those two guys, Dante Thornton and then Troy Franklin, the other, is that Franklin tends to work more in kind of the mid-range area, but Thornton, that guy is a Steph Curry sort of player on the perimeter. He's hitting from downtown. And this is not a direct comparison. I'm just saying stylistically, there's a similarity or two here. Reminds me a little bit of DeSean Jackson. Now, DeSean Jackson is much faster, and he, at this point, of course, is a much more proven player. But Dante Thornton hasn't really gotten going yet in his career, right? We still don't know the sort of player he's going to become. We've seen, glimpses of it here and there, but he had 2 touchdowns on 3 catches. Just catching the long ball showing the speed, not a big body receiver, but a fast guy. By the way, DeSean Jackson is only 5'10". I didn't know that. A friend of mine had to school me on it the other day. So Dante Thornton is 6 to 7 inches taller than DeSean Jackson. He runs so effortlessly down the sideline. I mean, when Thornton is running full speed, does it even look like he's running full speed? I didn't really think so. On the long touchdown, I thought he was jogging, but he was pulling away from Jamal Hill, who, as I mentioned, is a really nice player in the secondary and in the Pac 12 conference writ large. So that was a really nice thing to see because, I was talking about the deep threats earlier. Dante Thornton, first and foremost, is a guy who presents that threat. And I think that when you think of guys who are going to take the top off the coverage and beat you deep, he is going to be the number one guy. He at least has the potential to do that. Now, Hudson can run those sorts of routes from the slot. Seven McGee, clearly capable of some big plays in the passing game as well. But when you're talking about an outside receiver who's going to line up as an X or a Z, as they're called formationally in football, meaning they're the furthest receiver towards the boundary, and they're going to go deep and, take some one-on-one shots. Dante Thornton is, 6'4", 6'5". He's got great speed, good hands. I tell you what, he showed a lot of things in this game, and boy, I was really, really impressed with watching him play. So the offensive side of the ball, they showed a lot. The offensive lines, I think, were not as strong as we expect them to be. I think that had to do with the way that the spring game was designed, and I like the way that the spring game was set up, where you have enough players at each position where you can split into two teams, and you have some starters over here and some starters over there, and Jay Butterfield throws an interception, but can go play quarterback for the other team to get him his reps and all that sort of stuff. I think that was a smart way to do it. I liked that, much more than these sort of gimmicky, like the offense scores points regularly, but the defense, like USC, started with 21 points for the defense, and then, they got 3 points for a stop or a turnover. It's just, I don't know. It was weird. I would rather it look the way it did. And I think it's easier to evaluate when you're looking, at an environment that's as similar to a real game as possible, right? So that was the other reason that I like that. But the other player who stood out the most was on the defensive side of the ball, who we have discussed from time to time here on the pod. Who is it? I'll tell you after I talk to you about BetOnline, which is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline, your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. The other biggest standout, and I mean, there were several, and I will give all of them their due diligence here this week on the show. And this guy deserves a major shout out after what he showed Duck fans in the spring game on Saturday. That's DJ Johnson, who has changed positions each year. He has changed numbers each year. He's been number 7. He's been 89. He's now number 2. And I tell you what, he showed a lot in this spring game, and it begs the question. Let's just get to the performance first, and then talk about the question that I want to ask, that I know you all have in your minds as well out there, because it was the number one thing that I was thinking. He came out there and he was flying off the edge. I mean, that after that big run from Seven McGee, yellow team tries to pound it up the middle with Sean Dollars. Boom. DJ Johnson, who's a big dude. I mean, a big dude, comes flying off the edge, shot out of it, can't just pop Sean Dollars, stops him in his tracks. After that play, I was like, whoa. I haven't seen that from DJ Johnson before. At least not regularly. Well, hey, that's a nice thing to see. And then the game went on, and he was just tearing it up. He was making plays in the run game. He was showing the speed off the edge. We know he's a big, strong guy. I mean, he was showing an array of pass rushing moves. And, Dan Lanning has been very praiseworthy of his abilities as a football player. And he said the other day, and coaches are often complimentary of their players, but not like this. He thinks DJ Johnson could be one of the best players in the country. He looked like that on Saturday. He was so explosive and instinctual and just making plays in both the running and the passing game. And so here's the question that came into my mind that I'm sure all of you were thinking of as well. How the hell was he playing tight end? What was going on here? He did some nice things at tight end, and he was initially drawn there, I think, out of need. But has this guy just been sitting there for the last couple of seasons, mostly on the offensive side of the ball, as we have struggled to get after the passer outside of players named Kayvon Thibodeau? He's just been sitting there. I mean, I've been talking about for weeks on the pod, I have concerns about Oregon's ability to get after the passer in 2022. I still do. But I like their chances a little bit more if you can give me Braden Swinson on one side and that form of DJ Johnson. I mean, he was playing motivate. He looked like he was trying to show something to people. And this is his last year of college football. And I tell you what, he showed me something because I've been a little, I'll say hesitant on the prospects of him going to the other side. I've, kind of looked at it as, okay, he's played there before. He can maybe make a play every now and then. Like, all right, that's all good. If he's going to play like that, and I don't think it was really an indictment of Oregon's offensive line, I just thought that he was really, really impressive. If he's going to play like that, it could be a huge boon to Oregon's defense because he was just by and far the best defensive player on the field. Jackson LeDuc was close. He made some really great plays from the linebacker position as well. Not everybody was healthy on the defensive side for Oregon. Brandon Dorlus didn't play. I don't think Popo Almavai played. There was no Dante Manning as well. Noah Sewell, Justin Flo, neither of them played in this game. That's because we know what those guys can do. It didn't need to see him. But I tell you what, DJ Johnson, boy, he was a dude out there. I mean, that guy was flying around the field making plays, and I loved watching it, and on a day that was dominated by offensive highlights and offensive storylines as well, with the quarterbacks and the running backs showed some really good things. I thought DJ Johnson was the star on defense. I mean, he was in on a couple sacks. He had a couple other forced quarterback pressures as well. He was a force in the run game, just doing so many things. So if he plays like that, that's an advantage. That is an advantage for Oregon. And maybe he just needed this staff. Maybe there's something about this staff that's clicking. But he looked, at least in that game, like a completely different player. And I hope we get to see that version of DJ Johnson going forward. I appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.